I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to put a pair of Vortex Racing V2 rear sets on our 2014 STG Road Racing World Honda CBR1000RR race bike project. Vortex has been around a long time. If you have a sport bike, you've definitely heard the name, and odds are you've probably used some of their parts by now. They make great stuff. Onto the rear sets. Phenomenal packaging, right? One of the things I really appreciate is when the parts come with good instructions. They have an exploded view here. They have where you reuse the OEM bolts clearly marked so you know which bolts to keep. They give you an idea of which points they want lubrication at, which points they want Loctite at. It also makes reference to the brake light switch. When you're using a pair of aftermarket rear sets, you typically lose the ability to use that manual rear brake light switch. For our project here, I don't care about that switch. That switch is coming off and it's staying off. But if you're a street rider, odds are you want to retain that functionality, and there's a simple way to do it. And they tell you right here, it's a hydraulically actuated switch that takes the place of that manual switch. You replace the banjo bolt on the master cylinder. It's got two wires coming off of it. It's a piece of cake. You splice that into the rear brake light switch harness. You're done, and you retain all the functionality of that rear brake light, which for a street rider, I feel is pretty darn important. Onto the project. What do we need here? Hand tool wise, very basic stuff. Right? I've got my T-handle from Motion Pro. I've got some side cutters. Got a couple of wrenches. I've got a pick to deal with the connector on the brake light switch. A little brake cleaner, I always have some of that. I've got some lubrication and some red Loctite. The packaging for the Vortex stuff is another thing that I really appreciate. The guys over there do a great job. You've got the shift and the brake side packaged individually. So as you're working on each side, you only have to open up the one side and you don't get any of the parts mixed up. Okay, I opened up the package. I've got all the right side rear set laid out, and we are ready to remove the stock rear sets from the bike. It's a pretty simple process at the end of the day, right? I already showed you the hand tools. We'll begin by taking off the exhaust mount that we actually just got done putting on. Once again, that was why we did not Loctite or set this up with any kind of safety wire yet, because we knew that we're going right back in here for the rear set installation. That's going to totally change the way that the exhaust mounts up to the rear set. Let's go ahead and get that off. Save all the pieces. Depending upon what exhaust system you use, that's going to look a little bit different too for you. I'm going to go ahead and trace the brake light switch wiring harness right up here into the subframe area. All we have left is the electronics tray right now. Pop that switch out of here. I'm going to unplug that. Once again, for our purposes, we're not reusing that. So that is just going to be moved out of place. We need to unbolt the rear master cylinder. There's actually a backup nut on this bolt. Per the instructions, this is one of the hardware pieces that we will be reusing. So we'll save all this. I always recommend too, anytime you're working on your bike, save everything you take off, all the OEM stuff. Keep it, even if you don't need to reuse it. You will find that in the future, that stuff might come in real handy. It's always nice to have some spare fasteners. Get this rear master cylinder off. I gotta tell you too, going through the Vortex rear sets while I was opening the packaging, the stuff looks brilliant. The machining is super clean. The finish on the actual part looks just brilliant. Definitely excited to be using those on this bike this year. So the actual rear set mounting bolts, these fasteners are something that we are going to be keeping and reusing. Third time's a charm. These are adjustable, tons of adjustment available in these. And until I get the body work on this bike and I get the seat back on, the truth is I'm not going to be able to put any thread locker on this stuff because there's a strong possibility that I'm going to have to move the mounting plates around to get just the right position for myself. And I'm not going to be able to go through that process today due to the fact that, like I said, no body work is on the motorcycle. Okay, the stock stuff is off and we're ready to put the Vortex rear sets on the CBR now. We're going to begin by putting the folding toe piece on the actual brake pedal. The way Vortex has designed this, you are able to adjust the length of the brake pedal itself. I wear a size 12, so I'm going to want it at its furthest position for the longest possible pedal. Smaller feet or the desire to have a shorter pedal, you're going to rotate that like so, so the actual pivot for that folding toe piece is closest to the pivot for the brake pedal itself. Critical step is to ensure that the folding toe piece is mounted in the right direction so it will fold inward towards the pivot for the pedal. If you mount it backwards, it's going to fold away and that is not going to do you any good at all. A couple of things we need to do here to make this happen. We're going to use a little bit of Loctite on this fastener. It is a really small 3mm Allen fastener, right? It's got a tapered head. There's no need for a lot of torque here, but there is some need for red Loctite per the instructions. Let's go ahead and thread that in. Got a relatively small T-handle here. That's plenty tight enough. And now we're going to get onto the toe piece itself. They're calling for a little lubrication on the toe piece pivot. So we're going to go ahead and just use a little bit of Mobil 1 red grease on that. That should work nicely. And I will show you how I put these together. This does take a little bit of effort. You got your spring. It's important that one leg of the spring is against the brake pedal. The other leg of the spring is going to be against the inside or the back side of the folding toe piece. Slide that in like so. Let's grab this pivot and we're going to get it started, and then I'm going to use a pair of pliers to help me compress this. There it is. It's going through the actual folding toe piece. Now we got to get it to get started in that spring. And then once I get that rolling, I will go ahead and use the pliers to help push this through. To shield and protect the aluminum, I'm going to use a rag over the top of this. Got a pair of common pliers here. I'm going to open up the jaw. This is just going to obviously help me push that through. Went through quite nicely. Push it through the rest of it. Obviously check it, it's okay. Wipe off the excess grease. Okay. Pivots in, folds nicely. Now we need to put on the snap ring. This is a pretty small snap ring. I actually don't have a pair of snap ring pliers in my box that will go around, or that, I'm sorry, will get inside the holes. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of hold it in place and try and use a flat bladed screwdriver to stretch it over. Be careful when you're doing this so that you don't let it fling off the pivot. You don't want to be chasing the snap ring around. What I like to do to make sure a snap ring is properly seated is you rotate it in the groove like that. If it spins around nice and easy, you know you've got it in place. Double check this a couple times, and you'll note that the way I have this set up, I have the snap ring facing down towards the ground. Now that we've got that lever set up, we're ready to begin mounting the rear sets to the motorcycle. A couple of steps that we need to take here. This is our actual mounting bracket that's going to bolt to the frame. We need to bolt the exhaust bracket to the rear set bracket itself. We're going to use some Loctite in this position. We do not want these fasteners coming loose down the road. Go ahead and back these out. Put a little bit of Loctite on. These are new fasteners that were supplied with the rear sets from Vortex. These are not OEM. Put a little bit of Loctite on these bad boys. What I do along the way here too is I'll mock things up a little bit and take a look at it as I'm going to get a really good feel for how this is going to go together. The instructions are good, but I still think taking just a minute to mock something up has real benefit. Go ahead and let's put this in place. Let's get our T-handle here. You need to put this on before you put the bracket on the bike because the tolerances now are really tight. You'd have a difficult time doing this. If it was already on the motorcycle, reasonable amount of torque, and we are ready to install this on the bike. This is where we're going to be reusing the OE fasteners. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit these with not red, but some blue Loctite, because I do not want these coming loose while we're out there on the race. Okay, brackets assembled. I'm going to circumvent the instructions here just a little bit. In these OE fasteners that are going in, I'm going to put just a little bit of blue Loctite on it. I'm not going to get crazy with it, but there's really, unless you're servicing the bike, no reason to pull these back off down the road. But I certainly don't want them to come loose while we're out on track. So just a little bit of blue Loctite here I think will go a long way. Once again, we'll go back to the T-handle to snug these fasteners up. Remember, if you're more comfortable with a torque wrench, look up the OEM spec and use the torque wrench. Okay, now we are ready to assemble the actual footrest. Per the instructions, we need to get the foot peg mounted to the footrest itself. This calls for the use of some lubricant, and we're going to go ahead and once again just look at the instructions. It shows the lubricating points here. They want the washers lubricated. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of grease on each one. You want everything to pivot nice and smoothly. No binding, no sticking. Use nice roller bearings. Go ahead and put just a little bit around here as well. And then our brake lever is going to slide onto the foot peg like so. Go ahead and grease up this other friction washer here. Both sides. Put that over. You'll notice the Vortex foot pegs actually have grooves in the pegs that line up with the footrest bracket. So I'm going to go ahead and line that up. And then our fastener is here. Another great spot right here for Loctite, in my opinion. I'm just going to go with the blue stuff. Thread that in. When we're done with this and we tighten this up, we want to verify that we've got good, smooth action here on this brake lever. Won't have any issues with that moving forward. Looks great. Okay, I've got the exhaust mounted up to the bracket as supplied right here. Honestly, it took a little bit of modification to get this exactly where we wanted it. We had to reform the bracket a little bit to get a good gap here at the swing arm, and that's just part of, merging two aftermarket components. We're merging an aftermarket exhaust with an aftermarket rear set. They're both designed to work with stock stuff, but the difference is the M4 exhaust wants to bolt up on the outside of the stock rear set, which pushes it out a little bit farther. And the way the Vortex bracket is set up, it's looking to catch the inside of the canister. Long story short, it's a little bit opposite of one another. So it just took a little reforming of the bracket, a little patience, right? And we got this done. While we're at it, I drilled the nut here because I want to safety wire this. And then I also drilled just a small hole right through the exhaust bracket here in the rear set. This is one of those spots that most race organizations, they're going to want to see safety wired. So we're just going to go ahead and, while we're in this, handle it right now so we don't have to come back and revisit this later on. Typically, unless you crash the bike, you're really not going to be pulling this back apart. This is kind of a one and done situation. So we're going to go ahead and just handle it right now. We'll put one more twist in that safety wire, and then we'll pull it through the nut. Safety wire, and then we'll be ready to put our footrests on. Like I said before, I am not going to be able to dial in the ergonomics of the footrest until I have a body work on the bike, which is going to happen pretty soon, because I hope to ride this thing next weekend. So we're going to pick a spot and not use any Loctite as of today, because I want to give it an opportunity to get that body work on there, get my boots on, and really dial in the ergos of the rear sets so they best suit me. Get a little safety wire job done here. Drilling those bolts and nuts, that's always a good time. I mean that with a ton of sarcasm, of course. So you got that, that's all good to go now. We've got all of our pivot points here lubed up, ready to rock. And pass that through like that. And the spot I'm going to try and run with here is just going to be all the way up and all the way back. We want as much ground clearance as possible. If everything goes well, I should be doing some pretty low cornering on this bike. I sure did on the R1, and I'm hoping that this one handles as good as the other. Odds are with Chris's help and his Geico crew chief's help, I should be able to get this bike in a pretty nice spot. We're going to go ahead and tighten this up, and we're going to put the bolts through the master cylinder and get everything. Okay, now we're going to begin working on the clutch side of the bike, clutch lever side. We're going to remove the rear sets, we're going to remove the shift linkage. We have a brand new shift knuckle up here. It's going to allow us to use GP or standard shift. We're going to use GP for this application, and then remove the shifter. Another thing I'm going to have to do after this is I need to remove the kickstand and rewire the kickstand switch so that the bike will start. If you just unplug the kickstand switch, you're going to have an open circuit and the motorcycle is not going to start. And when I do that, I like to solder that. We'll do that in a separate video to show you what it takes to have a good solid connection there. But for right now, we're just going to remove the OEM rear. I'll loosen up the pinch bolt up here at the shift knuckle. Get that out. We will save all of this stuff and use it for spares down the road if we have to. Hopefully that situation never manifests itself. Better be safe rather than sorry. A little easier on the shift side at the end of the day than the brake side. First thing is, we don't have to deal with the exhaust, and honestly on this bike, that took a little bit of effort, a little more than I really expected. We're going to reuse these 2 OEM bolts. Pretty easy here on the shift side to get rid of that. Okay, rear sets off. First thing we're going to do is we're going to assemble folding toe piece on the shift side. We talked about this on the brake side. It's the same exact deal. Over here, you are able to dial in the length of the pedal depending on your preference. I'm going to have it fully extended. If you want it shorter, you'll rotate it over this way. Red Loctite is what they recommend. This is a really small fastener. It doesn't require a ton of torque, but they do want red Loctite on it. Don't over tighten this, because at the end of the day, the tapered head and the Loctite together, they will do all the work and hold this together quite nicely. Just using a 3mm T-handle. Snug that up like so. Remember, the key here is make sure the folding toe piece is able to fold inward, right? If you put it on the wrong way, it's not going to fold inward, it will only fold forward. You don't want that. Put your spring in place, right? One of the legs for the spring is going to face the actual arm for the pedal. The other one will face the back of the folding toe piece. I'm going to use a little bit of grease on the pivot pin. They recommend that in the instructions. Just a little bit. Make it go together a little bit easier as well. I want to get everything lined up. This can be just a little bit challenging because there is obviously some pressure in there from the spring, okay? So push down. We showed you on the other side. I'm actually, once I get it started, I'm going to go after it with a pair of pliers, and that's going to help a little bit. The reason they do this, like I said on the other side, is that they don't know if you're going to want to use the longer or shorter position for the shift lever, okay? And the brake lever, so they have to put it in the bag disassembled so that you're able to dial in the fit to a position that best suits you. It can be a little tricky, so once again, be patient. I use the pliers to kind of squeeze the spring back into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cover up the rear set, because I don't want to gall this thing all up. They're gorgeous. I'm going to cover up that shift pedal and get the pliers on it. Let's see if I can't get that thing to compress and go in there. Like I said, it can be a little bit tricky, so be patient. Compress the spring just a little bit more. Brake side was a whole lot easier than this one. And there it goes. I actually grabbed on that folding tip and pulled it forward, and that made a big difference. Now we've got to put on the snap ring. I don't have a pair of snap ring pliers that goes down to this size, right, diameter hole, so we're just going to go ahead and do this with a screwdriver. Make sure you keep some pressure on it, right, with your other hand, so you don't lose it. You shoot that thing off, you'll be searching forever. Spin it around in the groove to make sure that it's in there nicely. Notice how I have the snap ring facing down. So we have our pedal assembly all set and ready to go. Next up is going to be mounting the actual adjuster plate itself. We're going to use the OEM fasteners here. This is fixed. There's no need to take these off for any kind of adjustment. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of blue Loctite on these fasteners now. Down the road, we're going to be installing, I believe, a Bazaz fuel controller, traction control, quick shift, the whole deal. So that is going to put us in a position where we're going to have to change the shift rod. For now, we're just going to install the shift rod that's been supplied with the kit for the GP shift position. A little bit of blue. Grab our T-handle. Torque those down. Excess Loctite, wipe that off. Now let's get our foot peg on the footrest bracket. I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of blue on here as well. I like how Vortex has got grooves in the foot pegs, so that when they go on the footrest, right, you're able to get these torqued down nicely and they don't sit there and continually spin in the footrest. What's also nice is with the grooves, if you get the foot pegs worn out a bit, you're able to take the bolt out, rotate it 180 degrees tight, and you'll have nice sharp foot pegs again and hold it right in place. Let's go ahead and get our T-handle. Get that torqued on nice. Okay, now for our shift lever. Okay, foot peg is on and torqued, good to go. Adjuster plate on and torqued. We're going to locate this in the same spot we did on the other side to keep that stuff even. Now it's time to put on our shift pedal. This Rearset kit is going to move the location of the shift pedal from that big kickstand bracket, which we're going to be able to 86 all that, which is super cool, up to the actual footrest bracket itself. I'm going to put just a little bit of lube on this. That is a pivot point. There are bearings in there too, but you know what? A little bit of grease here is not going to hurt anybody. And then I'm also going to put a little bit of thread lacquer on this because we really want this to stay tight as well. The idea is not to have any mechanical issues when you're out on track. So this is going to go on here like so. In between the actual shift pedal and the bracket, they have a spacer that's going to go in there. You'll see how the actual heim joint passes through the inside window there of the footrest. Go ahead and get this lined up. And hit the thread locker from the back side like that. I'm going to run this down only finger tight right now because we're going to use a wrench to snug it up once we have it up here on the motorcycle. All the way up, all the way back, just like the brake side. This is a fastener supplied by Vortex. Not reusing OEM here, like we did when we mounted the adjuster plate to the frame. So get that in there. Get the lower one in. A lot smoother than the other side, that's for sure. We had a couple of hurdles we had to overcome over there to get a good fit. Get nice even torque on these two fasteners. Like so. 14mm wrench. It's going to work quite nicely on the shift pedal. I'm going to keep checking the action of the shifter as I want that to remain nice and smooth, and that's why the spacer's in there. That feels great. And the more you use it too, the better that's actually going to feel. Looking at our instructions now, we're going to use reverse shift. You've got your GP shift where the knuckle is going to be facing up, and then you have your standard shift where the knuckle will be facing downward. Comes complete with 2 shift rods. Let's go ahead and disassemble this really quickly. And we'll get that knuckle on there. Something that's really important is that when you finish this up and you've got that shift knuckle on there, you want to make sure you've got a nice 90-degree angle between the rod and the knuckle. That is going to give you the most leverage, right, for good, smooth shifts. See if it makes reference to which one you need to use rod-wise. No, so let's take a look here and see if this is going to require the longer or the shorter of the two. I'm going to run with the shorter of the two. What I like to do is I like to try and get both of these in there as even as possible, okay? So we'll actually move that just for a minute, just so we can get good spacing here and get this started. Makes adjusting the shifter a lot easier down the road if you have good even spacing for both of these heim joints actually inside of the shift rod. What you want to try to avoid is having one that's in there like another couple of threads as compared to the other. Run that in there, slide that off because that's going to need to come back to get us more in that 90-degree position. Once again, this is going to be a pretty temporary situation for us here because at the end of the day, we will be installing a different shift rod that is going to have the shift sensor in it for the quick shifter. So this is just temporary right now. Let's go ahead and get this stuff in place. Once again, you want a 90-degree angle right here. That is critical to have proper leverage so you get good positive shifts. I'm going to go ahead and get the fastener up here in the shift knuckle. One thing you're going to want to watch here too is make sure you have plenty of clearance against the frame. Okay? What I'm going to do to make sure that is the case is I'm going to kind of pull out on the shift knuckle and make sure that it's all the way to the end of the shift shaft as I snug that up, and that's going to help make sure that we have plenty of clearance here at the frame. That might be more important once we begin to use that shift sensor for the quick shifter on the Visage unit. We're going to need to use a 90-degree Allen wrench to snug this up now, or a ratchet on the end of this, due to its changing position. So ratchet out of the toolbox, snug this bad boy up. Normally, your next steps would be adjusting shift linkage, right? Adjusting brake pedal height. That is really critical. You're going to want to wear your riding boots or your race boots when you do that to make sure that you have the shifter and the brake dialed in, as well as you have the foot peg height at a spot where ergonomically you have the motorcycle where it needs to be for you. Once again, we can't do that. We don't have any body work or seat on the motorcycle or subframe actually right now. But that is something, as we get this whole motorcycle together, we're going to really spend a lot of time and make sure all those adjustments are right where they should be. For now, we're going to leave you with just a nice close-up of both sides. Brand new Vortex rear sets installed on our 2014 STG Road Racing World Honda CBR1000RR project.